So last week on the channel, Blade used his channel points to request The Strangers, which is one of the most underrated horror films I've ever seen. This week on the channel, Blade used his channel points to do the exact opposite of that, as today we'll be looking at Exorcist 2, The Heretic. God help us all. Released in 1977, Exorcist 2 obviously is a direct sequel to the 1973 film The Exorcist. The Exorcist, of course, is looked at as one of, if not the greatest horror film of all time. And in stark contrast, Exorcist 2 The Heretic is maybe the worst film I've ever seen. It's technically classified as a horror film, but I can't call it that because there's literally nothing scary about it. If I had to classify it as anything, it would probably be shitty art film. You know those movies that think they're really deep and meaningful, but in reality they just suck? Yeah, this is that. This is the king of that. The film takes place 4 years after the original and follows Regan McNeil, who is recovering from being possessed in the first film. She's seen over by her doctor, Gene Tuscan, played by Louise Fletcher, and she receives help from a priest, Philip Lamont, who's played by Richard Burton. It seems like the demon Pazuzu might still be inside her, and it's up to Father Lamont and Dr. Tuscan to get it out of her or whatever. The movie cost about $14 million to make and made about $30.7 million at the box office, which doesn't sound too bad except when you realize the first film in its initial release made about $63 million, and altogether it made over $400 million through, rescreenings. I imagine this film didn't make anything through rescreenings, because I imagine nobody ever wanted to see it again after seeing it the first time. And if you couldn't guess already, this of course was a critical failure, and it's often considered one of the worst films ever made. But just how bad is bad? Well, let's get into it as we take a look back at Exorcist 2, The Heretic. So our film begins with Father Philip Lamont, who's in Africa to perform an exorcism. There's this possessed girl who claims she's a healer, and he tries to perform the exorcism but he freezes up, so then she sets herself on fire. Quite a start there. We then meet up with Regan, who's practicing for her tap dance recital, I guess, and wearing that for whatever reason. She's supposed to be 16 in this film, by the way. Regan also frequents a psychiatric hospital under the guidance of Dr. Gene Tuscan. Dr. Tuscan is attempting to help Regan deal with the memories of her exorcism, but Regan claims not to remember anything at all. Also, side note, her mother is not in this film. She's only mentioned a couple times as being on assignment, which is basically an excuse because Ellen Bernstein wanted nothing to do with this monstrosity, and yeah, good call on her part. Meanwhile, Father Lamont has returned from South Africa and he's meeting with a cardinal of the Catholic Church. The cardinal was played by Paul Henreid, who is known as being Victor in Casablanca, and this was his last ever film role, which is a damn shame. Anyway, the cardinal tells him about Father Marin, who was the priest killed by Pazuzu in the first film. Apparently, Father Marin is facing posthumous charges of heresy because he believed in the devil, and the New Age church doesn't want people to believe in the devil, so they're gonna charge him with being a heretic. That's fucking weird, but okay. And anyway, he wants Father Lamont to investigate what really happened with Marin's death. That leads to the psychiatric hospital, where he meets Dr. Tuscan. He wants permission to speak with Regan, but Dr. Tuscan's like, nah, we shouldn't do that. She doesn't remember, and I prefer to stay it that way, even though I thought her job was to help bring the memories out. I don't even know, man. He does meet Regan, though, and the next day he gets to watch Dr. Tuscan attempt to hypnotize her with some kind of synchronizer, which hypnotizes her by attempting to give her a seizure, I guess. The machine is designed to sync up two people's minds, and they sync Regan up with Dr. Tuscan, and Father Lamont starts asking questions about Pazuzu, and Regan snaps out of it, but Dr. Tuscan does not. So then Father Lamont goes in to save her, and we see a really shitty recreation of the first film, with Pazuzu doing a very poor Pazuzu voice. I guess they couldn't get the same person, killing Father Marin, and Pazuzu through the dream world almost rips out the doctor's heart, but she can't quite do it. Lamont saves her at the last minute through the flashback. God, what the fuck? Dr. Tuscan doesn't remember any of it though, and neither does Regan apparently, but Father Lamont remembers it. all of it. And then Reagan draws him a picture of him, but it doesn't look like him, but I guess it's supposed to be him with fire. And then Father Lamont's like, oh shit, there's a fire, and he goes into the basement with Dr. Tuscan, and yeah, there's a box on fire for whatever reason, and they're trying to put it out, and Dr. Tuscan gets the fire extinguisher, and she sees the picture, she sees him with the fire behind him, like it's the picture. Meanwhile, he's trying to fucking put the fire out by hitting it with a crutch. I don't know fucking why. And then Dr. Tuscan just puts the fire out with a fire extinguisher, which is better than a crutch. And then outside, he's like, yo, that machine helped us discover the demon. Dr. Tuscan's like, that don't make no goddamn sense. He's like, no, demon. She's like, no. You know how I told you this is a really shitty art film? Well, that starts to kick off now as Reagan's in her high-rise apartment dreaming about Africa, because I guess she wants to bless the rains, and then there's all this locust swarm going on, and meanwhile, while that's going on in the real world, she's standing on her balcony and almost falls off, but she doesn't, and then the locusts are still going on. And then Sharon from the first film, who was like her guardian or whatever, is like, yo, are you okay? And she's like, yeah, I was just blessing my doves, it's all good. And it was at this point, ladies and gentlemen, where I screamed in terror. Not because this movie is scary, but because I realized there's still 70 minutes left in this fucking film. So then Sharon and Father Lamont, who somehow know each other now, even though they were never actually introduced on screen, go to the old house in Georgetown where the original exorcism happened, and Father Lamont just kind of looks around and then prays to Jesus, and this whole scene was pretty pointless. Back at the hospital, they synchronize Lamont with Reagan, and he sees a vision of the past in Africa where Dr. Marin was trying to perform an exorcism on some kid, but the kid wasn't actually the one fucked up. Turns out the kid was a healer named Kokomo, and actually some lady was possessed. Oh, and also turns out that the demon is still inside Reagan, and she reveals himself to Lamont. And then we get a flashback of Marin and the fucking lady who's like possessed in some kind of cliff, but they're in the middle of the cliff, and I don't know why. And there's also some other dude there, and he falls to his death. And God, I don't know what the fuck's going on. I just watched this movie and I don't know what's going on. And I guess the locusts are actually just a product of Pazuzu, and Pazuzu, speaking for Reagan, uses the locusts to take Lamont to an adult Kokomo who has the power of the leopard that can scare the demon away. But if he can scare her away, then why would the demon show Lamont that? That doesn't make any fucking sense now that I think about it. Anyway, after that happens, Reagan is talking to this autistic girl who can't speak, but then Reagan reaches inside her mind and gives her the ability to speak, because that makes fucking sense. And Lamont is like, the Tuscan, dude, she's actually possessed, we have to help her. And Tuscan's like, no, fuck you, science, bitch, and she storms off. But apparently Lamont and Reagan's minds are now synced up and connected, because they both meet at the Natural History Museum, somehow knowing the other was gonna be there. And after they look at some exhibits, Lamont realizes that he has to go to Africa, not to bless the rains, but to find Kokomo and learn how to stop Pazuzu. And he then goes to the Cardinal and asks for permission to bless the rains, and the Cardinal's like, no, fuck you, but then he just goes anyway. And then Lamont finds that weird cliff where Marin and the possessed girl were in, and that random guy fell down, and then he finds the body. And the other priest there is like, how'd you know the body was gonna be there? And he's like, cause Pazuzu told me. And the priest is like, oh, you're a fucking demon worshiper. And then they start pelting him with rocks, and meanwhile Reagan's doing a fucking tap dance recital, and as Lamont's being pelted with rocks, she feels it too, and she starts freaking out. So Dr. Tuscan does the only thing logical. Fucking drugs her. Lamont, meanwhile, is still trying to find out where Kokomo is, and then fucking Ned Beatty shows up out of nowhere in a plane, and he's like, oh, I know where that is, and then he just flies him there. Lamont searches all over for Kokomo and is unable to find him, but meanwhile Reagan has undrugged herself, and they sync up for their minds again, and through their mind syncage, he's able to find Kokomo. And hey, Kokomo is played by James Earl Jones in what was totally the best movie he was involved in the year 1977. Also, I hope to God he got paid well for this piece of shit, but I have a sinking feeling that he didn't. Anyway, Kokomo accuses him of no longer believing in Jesus, and he's like, no, I do believe in Jesus. He's like, alright, if you want the truth, trust in Jesus and walk over these spikes to me. So then Lamont impales himself on the spikes and falls face forward and wakes up in a research facility. And in the research facility, he meets the real Kokomo. I guess that stuff before was just a weird transportation vision or whatever the fuck. And Kokomo is actually some sort of scientist who's trying to research how to stop the locust swarm from starting. And by making good locusts that will be good and calm the other locusts. Is that even a real thing? Probably not. And I guess Pazuzu only attacks people who have psychic healing ability, like Reagan, which, sure, why not? Speaking of Reagan, she jacks his synchronizer from the psychiatric ward and just dips on out of there with it. Her and Lamont, who's back, and meet up at the Natural History Museum and decide to go to a hotel room to use the synchronizer. Thank God he's a priest, because she is 16. Actually, wait, maybe him being a priest makes it worse? Oh shit. Anyway, they sync up again. He gets a spiritual message from Marin telling him to watch over Reagan. This then puts him into some sort of possessed trance, and he starts walking towards the train station. Reagan follows him, and then she calls Dr. Tuscan, who also has Sharon with her, and tells them, like, yo, I'm gonna go to Georgetown with the father, and you can't stop me, bye. And then Sharon is very weirdly like, that bitch, like, isn't that the kid you're responsible for? What the fuck? And then they're like, alright, we're going to Georgetown too. Sharon and Tuscan are going by plane, and Lamont and Reagan are going by train, but somehow Lamont and Reagan get there first, and Lamont and Reagan get on a bus, while Sharon and Tuscan get in a taxi. And I guess buses are also faster, because Lamont and Reagan get to the house first. And then shit really pops off. Lamont opens the door to Reagan's old bedroom, and a bunch of locusts fly out and start swarming the house, while simultaneously the taxi driver's windshield cracks and they crash into the house. The taxi driver's dead, but Tuscan and Sharon are not, and Sharon is looking kind of possessed right now. Lamont and Reagan then open Reagan's old bedroom door again, and Pazuzu's there, but this time as a Reagan succubus, and she's taking control of Lamont and instructs Lamont to kill Reagan. Meanwhile, fucking outside, Sharon just sets herself on fire. Lamont's about to kill Reagan, and I kid you not, this fucking happens. Reagan snaps him out of it by saying, "Porqué?" Which is what the South African girl, I guess, said at the beginning. So it snaps him out of it, and he starts attacking Pazuzu. And then a lot of shit starts happening. A big old locust storm comes, and they're swarming the house again, and the house is starting to completely break apart. Meanwhile, Tuscan's outside like, oh god, what the fuck? But don't worry, Lamont knows what to do, as he rips out Pazuzu's heart and just kills the demon. Alright, that works. And Reagan does some kind of fucking locust dance, which I guess Kokomo did when he was a kid to get rid of the locusts, and it works. They all go away. Well, the house is destroyed, and Sharon is somehow still alive. Hey, oh no, she's dead. Never mind. And then Tuscan's like, sorry y'all, I believe now, but the world won't. So she instructs Lamont to watch over Reagan, because that's how custody works, I guess. And they just walk off into the distance while the police show up, as Tuscan's just kind of staring off into the distance. And then this movie ends, and thank God for that. Well, since this is technically a franchise and a look back, we might as well pull out our first ever Exorcist big board. But I mean, come on. Like, come on. Obviously, Exorcist 1, number 1, this number 2. It's kind of pointless, but it's tradition, I guess. Where the hell do I start with this? I mean, this is like if you took LSD, but it was LSD designed to make you a really shitty filmmaker. The guy who wrote this, William Goodhart, doesn't even have a Wikipedia page, so that should tell you a lot. This was directed by John Borman, though, who directed Deliverance as well, so that's something. It's almost like they watched the first film and they're like, oh, people liked the first film because it was different, so let's make something different. And I get that, I guess, but it was just some sort of shitty art film. Like, half this movie is just like weird screeching and shitty flashbacks and just like stuff that I'm sure in their mind seemed really cool, but it doesn't translate into a good movie. And you know what? Believe it or not, despite everything I've said here, Usually after a movie like this, I would say, no, don't watch this. I'm actually going to recommend you watch this movie. And that might be a massive surprise, but I feel like I can't do it enough justice just how fucking terrible this film is by talking to you about it. There's only so much I can describe to you, through a review. This is going to be like, what, 12 minutes or whatever. I feel like you should see this because you're not going to really get how bad this is until you see it. It is legitimately maybe the worst large budget horror film I've ever seen. And believe it or not, there was actually a third film. That's right, this is a fucking trilogy. The Exorcist 3 came out in 1990 and was better than this film, but that is probably not very hard. Jason Miller comes back for that one though, which is pretty cool. Could have used him in this one. Also, one more thing, I really didn't like how sexualized Reagan was in points in this movie. With what she was wearing at the beginning and her wearing a nightgown for most of this. Like, she's supposed to be 16, man. 16! Like, that's pretty fucking weird if you ask me. Just saying. I mean, I don't know if the actor was actually 16, I don't think so, but sexualizing a 16-year-old character? Yeah, I don't know about that one, Chief. That don't exactly sit right with me. But yeah, believe it or not, watch this movie. It's terrible, but it's terrible to the point where you need to see it yourself to see what I mean. Because holy shit. And next week on the channel on Halloween, we're going to take a look back at another crap film, but a crap film that's actually fun, as we take a look back at Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. But that's going to do it for my Exorcist look back at Exorcist 2, The Heretic. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you, Blade. Not really, but thank you for using your channel points on this. Also, damn you, but also thank you. Dear God. I don't think he's even seen this. You know what, Blade, I'm cursing you to watch this movie. For putting me through it, I am now cursing you to watch this movie. You will be forever cursed until you watch this film. That is your curse for life. But yeah, if you liked it, be sure to like the video. If you want to follow any of my social media links, they're all in the description. Thank you to all my patrons for supporting me and my channels. With all that being said though, my name is Noah Taff. This has been my review of Exorcist 2, The Heretic, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.